All right, let's start with QBs. And there's one big name here, Sam. There's one huge name based off performance. There's other somewhat big names, but Sam Darnold, the prize of the QB free agent class. And then you also have
that a year ago.
I know, right? And you have the two Steelers with the two Steelers with Justin Fields, Russell Wilson. Shout out to Nagler in the house here. You're everywhere. Guys following us to breakfast nonstop, but here he is in the chat. So you got the two Steelers quarterbacks. You have Jameis Winston, who was the real star of Super Bowl week. Jalen Hurts, Cooper DeJean. Who was the star last week? No, it was Jameis Winston from start to finish, Monday through Saturday. Future media star Jameis Winston, also a free agent. He was asking around. He was asking all the Eagles and Chiefs players where he should sign. He was getting ready for free agency.
Yeah, and a few of them were answering, he should sign with Fox the way he's going about. I think they're right. Based off what we saw last week, I think Jameis's logical destination should absolutely be a Fox superstar, not trying to be a quarterback anymore.
So we're going to talk, I know we're going to get later, a little bit later, which players we might not want to really overpay for, whatever it might be. We discussed Sam Darnold yesterday, but some QB needy team is looking, and what teams are doing right now, they're stacking the draft, they're stacking free agency, and then there's probably a third list of tradable candidates, and the quarterback crop isn't looking great, right? So unless you love Tyler Shugg as like a second or third rounder from Louisville, or the second wave of quarterbacks, and you want to take a shot on one of those guys, you're really looking at the couple first rounders in Shedeur Sanders and Cam Ward. Or you're thinking, if you're the Giants or the Titans, the Raiders, the Jets, maybe bringing him back, all these teams are debating, is Sam Darnold, more than just a reclamation project? He's a good starter now.
Yeah, I mean, Darnold, it feels like Darnold is a little bit like Cousins from a year ago, where he's the big domino that needs to fall in order for other things to kind of fit into place. Like, there's a bunch of these quarterback-needy teams. Obviously, free agency happens before the draft, so to an extent, it dictates what happens in the draft, though this time a year ago, we would have said that ruled the Falcons out of the quarterback market because they signed Kirk Cousins, and then a month later, they're drafting Michael Penix Jr. at the top of the draft, which, given how Cousins went last year, turns out to have been a pretty important decision. But theoretically, like, Darnold will rule a team out of the quarterback market based off where he signs, and potentially rule other teams in. So he's the first big domino, I think, to fall. And the first part of that is the Vikings' decision. Like, forget, where else he's going to land. It's like, where are they on Sam Darnold after the season that he just had, and such a weird thing, because you said yesterday, like, they've got options, right? This is not simply a binary, do you give him a monster contract, yes or no, flowchart. It's, well, okay, if no, do you franchise tag him? Like, there's other options in addition to, do you hand him a monster contract?
Can we just really quick handle the news that came out today, supposedly, about Trevor Lawrence? Can we just discuss this? Did you see the Trevor Lawrence trade rumors? Can we just debunk all of this really quick? So I don't even know where it started. It's ridiculous, and I'm sure I'll get asked about it later today from Pony and Mulsey on the Pittsburgh radio hit, that the Pittsburgh Steelers have inquired, trade inquiry about Trevor Lawrence, who just signed before last offseason. And if he was traded by the Jags, who don't have a GM, by the way.
Right.
Don't have a GM at the moment. They're interviewing GMs. They have an acting GM, yes. Ethan Baugh, acting GM. It's a $203 million cap hit, Sam, to trade or release Trevor Lawrence. Like, this is it. Just this needs to die. This rumor. It's not real. It's not happening. End it.
You're telling me that the report is not real.
So the report's interesting because we say this all the time. Every team's having every conversation, right? They're going to look up at all 53 players and probably have a conversation, other than like the Chiefs trading Mahomes and the Bills trading Josh Allen. The Chiefs are probably having this discussion about, would we trade Chris Jones? Do they want to? No, but there's like a 5% chance that they might do it. So they have the conversation. And so you could create a report that's like, Chiefs are having internal discussions. They might trade Chris Jones. Dallas is having internal discussions. They might trade Micah Parsons. Everything's being discussed, as it should be, right? You and I discuss Sometimes what if we did 20-minute shows? It doesn't mean we're going to do it. What if we did 6-hour shows? Doesn't mean we're going to do it. We had those discussions, right? We're business planning, right? What do we do? That's not news. It's not news. And if the Steelers made this offhand call, which, by the way, they would know the implications of trading Trevor Lawrence and how unlikely that is. But if they made this offhand call, hey, is Trevor for sale? We don't have they probably called every day. Is Josh Allen for sale? Like, they could, but it's not news. It's not happening. So it doesn't need to be reported on. It's ridiculous.
I mean, the original report from somebody called Ryan Burr on Twitter that said the Steelers have made inquiries to the Jags about trading quarterback Trevor Lawrence. This is directly from the horse's mouth in the Jags organization. And then, wow, at the end of it. I mean, we said this yesterday, right? Like, you should call somebody up and offer an insulting offer because they might take it, right? What's the harm? I think it's plausible that the Steelers called the Jags and were like, you got a new regime in charge who are not, they're not the ones that drafted and or signed Trevor Lawrence to the long-term contract. What do you think? Would you move him? And presumably the Jags, because of what it would, like, independent of whether Liam Cohen likes Trevor Lawrence or not, just because of how painful it would be to get rid of him, we're like, yeah, thanks, but no thanks, we're keeping him.
Yeah, you literally can't sign any other players this year with $203 million of cap, dead cap. Like, it's just not happening. Like, don't let it go viral. Don't even react to it. It doesn't matter. It's irrelevant.
I mean,
end it.
Look, I think it's worth reporting on if the Steelers made the phone call. Like, it doesn't matter that it's not going to happen. It's worth, I think, reporting that Pittsburgh called Jacksonville at least to inquire about Trevor Lawrence. I don't think that they would do it to, Joe Burrow, Josh Allen. Like, they're not making that phone call. It's specifically because it's a new regime with a quarterback that hasn't necessarily lived up to number one overall billing, and they need a quarterback. So, yeah, look, I have no problem with the report that it happened. Your problem should be with the people that haven't checked how plausible this could be for it to actually happen.
Yeah, where's old friend Brad Spielberger? I mean, he was kind of debunking all of it anyway. Same idea. Right. Guy just signed a ridiculous contract just before last year. Like, sure, that's really going to happen. Anyway, back to Darnold.
Well, that was a worthwhile diversion.
I thought it was. We needed to, because we're talking about quarterbacks, and it's all connected, right? Draft, free agency, and then trades. And when we go to fixing every team in 5 minutes, we'll discuss the Steelers and what do they do, right? With both Fields and Wilson coming off a year where they went super cheap at the position, which, again, if the goal is always a championship, but if the goal is maximizing your roster, it's not a bad strategy to do what the Steelers did last year, right? Pennies on the dollar for Russell Wilson and for Justin Fields. And theoretically it worked, right? You won 10 games. You certainly couldn't compete with the best teams in the AFC, but it worked as far as maximizing the roster for that year. But, it's not a great championship strategy, which is this quarterback draft class also probably not a great championship strategy. We're talking bridge quarterbacks, and that's what Sam Darnold was signed as last year. I called him the best bridge quarterback maybe in history. A 1-year, $10 million deal that turned into an MVP caliber type of run from Darnold until the very end. So, any of these guys, you just take this, low money chance on. And Darnold's going to command some money, but Fields, Wilson, a Jameis, any team willing to give those guys a starting opportunity for low money as a bridge guy.
Yeah, I mean, Darnold, I think, is definitely, like, he's the clear star, if you like, of this free agent group of quarterbacks. And as I said, the first domino that needs to fall. Once he goes somewhere, whether it's staying in Minnesota, whether it's moving on, whether it's a tag and trade type of deal and somebody acquires him, however it is, once the Darnold domino falls, then you're into the next wave, which is the sort of strict free agents like Russell Wilson, potential theoretical starters in free agency, either Wilson, Fields, does someone want to reclaim Daniel Jones, whatever. And then you've also got that specter of the guys that are not technically free agents, but are expected to be, which is Aaron Rodgers, probably the obvious name there. And then Kirk Cousins, based off what went down in Atlanta this year. I mean, I don't know if they're going to want to keep him around as an absurdly high paid backup. They could, they obviously carried both of them on the roster this year. just because the order has flipped does not necessarily mean that you want to get rid of him. But I don't know that Kirk Cousins is the kind of guy that's going to handle tremendously well being the well-paid backup to the guy that just took his job. And, you know, so Kirk Cousins could hit the open market as well. And whilst he's less of an attractive option than he was a year ago, because we've seen what it looks like with him coming back off that Achilles injury, even if he takes a step, like it's a much sort of, the negative is much more obvious than it was a year ago, because now it's a proven commodity as opposed to, theoretically, he might be okay. But he's an option that isn't technically a free agent yet, but probably will be.
Yeah. I see Cousins getting moved. Absolutely. As you know, Falcons, they're going to have to try to move on from him. They also, I believe it's the second fewest draft picks with Kirk Cousins cost them a pick last year when he admitted to tampering. They traded for Matthew Judon. So they lost out on some draft picks heading into this year. So they'll try to recoup the draft pick that Kirk Cousins lost them last year for tampering with Darnell Mooney. So yeah, I do expect that to happen. So again, the teams like the Browns, Giants, Titans, Raiders, Jets, all these teams that need to figure out quarterback, Cousins could be their bridge quarterback for right now. Anything else on the QB free agent class? It's not great.
Not unless we're talking like, you know, backup options.
Yeah, I mean, look, I always say I'd give Jameis a shot. I could now, you know, the Steelers have this history of this guy played well against, you know, a lot of teams do. This guy played well against us.
Yeah.
Let's sign him. Jameis to the Steelers. I think Tomlin could, says, hey, I could get them. The snow game, the snow upset.
At some point during the week of the Super Bowl, Jameis uttered the line that you always utter, which is he's one of the best 32 quarterbacks in the NFL. It's probably still true. I mean,
I think so.
Clearly he has problems in that every now and again he's just going to go YOLO and throw you 4 interceptions. But he probably is one of the best 32 quarterbacks in the NFL. And if you don't have any starter, if you don't have any guy that you're confident in, I mean, at the very minimum, Jameis as an option, you know, as a competition to whoever else you want to bring in, kind of makes sense.
And, you know, again, I'll repeat, the difference is, you know, signing QB 26 to 32 is not appealing, not enticing, not a recipe for, you know, championship success. You could get into a, you know, good 9 or 10 win season if things go right and the rest of the roster is good. But it's not like any other position where, you know, player 26 to 32 at his position's extremely valuable. He's a starter and he's going to contribute. So
thanks for watching all the way to the end of our video.
For more great content, click here to subscribe and here to watch another video. We'll see you again soon.